Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire. And this is, again, this is some of the, like, the boring side of this budgetary thing, and yet it is the most meaningful.
Which fined him $10,000 for practice.
And she's talking about one of the people that the dude he put in charge of infectious disease, I think.
Medicine without a license. He does not have a medical license. And for providing and instructing and giving children hormone blockers. That is what the finding of the Maryland Department, the state of Maryland, its medical licensing board was. And I'll submit that for the record, I hope with unanimous consent.
I'm assuming that you don't know what I'm about to tell you, or you wouldn't say something that was so dishonest. You may or may not know that David Geyer sued the American.
Oh, I do know that. I do know that. That doesn't change the findings, nor does it change the experience of the parents who testified.
That finding was reversed by court, and he was awarded $5 million.
That is not true. Now, let me ask. So I just want confirmation. David Geyer is still at HHS. I wrote you a letter about this.
Boy, he just collapses under that. That's not true.
And you have not responded.
Well, I apologize for that. That's our bad.
My bad. You know the part of my job that I'm supposed to do?
I will respond, but David Geyer is not managing autism research.
So what is his job?
What is
his job at HHS? This is somebody who gave parents the impression that he was a doctor and gave hormone blockers to children as young as 8, telling them that hormone blockers would somehow magically help their kids with autism.
His father is
His father is a doctor, but he is not.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, Trump had an uncle who was at MIT, and that makes him smart, right? And Elon Musk is making brain children. Don't you know how, like, genes work, lady?
His father was not in the room and did not, and he faked his father's signature according to the State Board of Medicine.
And that ruling was overturned by a court. So what you're saying is just wrong. It's just a lie. And they were actually, the court said that the Maryland Board of Physicians was guilty of actual malice in fabricating those charges against David Geyer.
Well, we will pursue this. And I will submit for the record.
So do you want to know why we brought David Geyer in?
Sure.
Because it wasn't to run autism research. In 2002, the CDC runs a vaccine safety data link, which is supposed to be the vaccine information for the biggest HMOs that are supposed to allow.
By the way, he's super fucking agitated right now.
CDC to have a surveillance system for vaccine injury. It's a backstop system.
Right. And what he wants to do is open it up so that anybody can log into it no matter where they are in the world and pretend to be from wherever they are. Because if HIPAA rules on it, you don't have to give any relevant information. It can just be anecdotal attacks at vaccines.
The CDC will not let any physicians in there to look at it, or any scientists, independent scientists.
He's neither a scientist nor a physician.
Right. Congress ordered CDC to open.
Yeah, but he drinks raw milk and he dips his junk in toxic swamp water on a regular basis. So what'd you do? What'd you do this weekend?
So they are the only scientists who have ever been in there.
But again, Mr. Geyer is not a scientist. Thank you.
Independent scientists.
Okay, Senator Hassan's time's expired, but before we move on, did you have a unanimous consent request that I heard in there, Senator?
Thank you, Senator Hawley. I did. A unanimous consent request for the printout of the website that shows Dr. Geyer is not Dr. Geyer, that's his father, Mr. Geyer, is employed, and also a unanimous consent request for the finding from the Board of Licensing in Maryland.
Without objection to both of those. And now, Mr. Kennedy, before we get to my time, do you want, if you'd like to finish your response, go ahead, and then I'll recognize myself.
Also, he jumps in. Now, I gotta say, this will be kind of shocking to all you guys. Watch how Hawley reacts. And again, this has a lot to do with the fact that red states have really bad health outcomes on the regular, and that Hawley represents a state with really bad health care and really bad health care outcomes.
David Geyer is the only living independent scientist who's seen the VSD inside. There's been a lot of monkey business with the VSD, including allegations of fraud.
I guess including letting a guy who's not a scientist and not a doctor look at it.
And he was
If he even did.
by an independent contractor that not as an HHS employee, but by an independent contractor.
Oh, like a public-private partnership? Glenn Beck will love that.
At the documents that we were getting to the VSD to see if they conformed with what he saw between 2002 and 2016. And that's the only reason that he was brought in, to see if there was, there's so much information that has disappeared from that database. The only way we could find out what information disappeared was because he was the one guy who saw it.
And just like
Well, why didn't he just send you his copies of what he saw? What's he going to tell you? That he recognizes numbers from 10, 12 years ago?
records show, he's not a scientist. Thank you very much.
All right. Secretary Kennedy, different subject, on a different subject. You and I have talked before.
Yeah, and at this
point,
smooth sailing. It's a Republican senator. Here we go.
And you and I have talked in person a number of times about Mifepristone. I just want to follow up with you because since the last time you were before the committee and the last time you and I spoke, there's been a major study by the Ethics and Public Policy Center of 865,727 prescribed cases of Mifepristone abortions, chemical abortions, between 2017 and 2023. Have you seen this study? Are you familiar with this? Do you know?
Yes, I am.
You will remember then that this data shows the biggest study on Mifepristone done, I think, ever, and it showed that nearly 11% of women experience very serious adverse health effects, to include sepsis, hemorrhaging, infection, of course, emergency room visits. Now,
yeah, and a lot of that, you think that's unique to an economic subgroup or a particular, like an educational subgroup, for example. You think there's maybe some alignment between the difficulty of getting the treatment and using it and how much instruction you get versus trying to get it and having to go out of state or not having it be able to get it directly from your own doctor, that percentage might be lowered immensely by you guys just letting women go to their doctor.
That's 22 times higher. That rate is 22 times higher than the FDA's current label, which says it's just 0.5, the incidence of serious adverse health events. So my question to you is this. You previously testified to the committee that
Here's the question. What's the cause of those those adverse health events? Is it the drug itself? Is it the lack of guidance in the administration? Is it secondary and follow-up care? It is the myriad of complications that happen or the timing difference in some pregnancies. And when, if you apply it too late in the pregnancy, it's more difficult for a woman's system. I'm sorry. No, it's probably just, it's mislabeled, so we should throw it out.
Do a top-to-bottom review of Mifepristone. Mifepristone is subject to a REMS currently. You have said you'll do a top-to-bottom review. Do you continue to stand by that? And don't you think that this new data shows that the need to do a review is, in fact, very pressing?
I think the new data, first of all, it validates the CAS study, which is previously probably the most comprehensive data that we've seen on it, and it is, and it's alarming, and clearly it indicates that at very least the label should be changed. I've asked Marty McCary, who's the director of FDA, to do a complete review and to report back.
Good. Do you have any sense of timeline, Mr.
I
Secretary?
do not.
That? It will be a top priority, though, for you. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, right there underneath actually putting a budget together and setting up a leadership system for the entire organization before people start dying of infectious diseases for no fucking reason.
You say that it probably indicates the label needs to be changed. Do you think it's also important as part of your review to consider whether it's necessary now to put back in place the long-standing safety protocols that always accompanied Mifepristone until the last administration? In-person dispensing, doctor visits, screening for...
Yeah, but that was until, that was when all states allowed for it. And they're getting to a point. If women have direct care, you don't have these adverse outcomes. And what you're willing to do is sacrifice 11% of these women to possibly never being able to have children again just so you could stick your fucking religious flag in the ground.
pregnancies?
I know that Marty McCary will make a recommendation. I feel that the policy changes will ultimately go through the White House, through President Trump.
But you'll make a recommendation based on the data?
Yes.
Good. On a different subject, talking about the advertising that is routinely done by pharmaceutical companies. You have been a longtime critic of direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising.
Yes, pharmaceuticals are very. I'm against it.
You wrote, I think, in the Wall Street Journal, that is routinely done by pharmaceutical companies. You have been a longtime critic of direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising.
Pharmaceutical. Mm-hmm.
You wrote, I think, in the Wall Street Journal a little over a year ago about the need to revisit guidelines around pharmaceutical advertising. Is that still your view? I mean, has your view changed?
Pharmaceutical advertising is particularly insidious because,
Yeah, because, every time I'm sitting there trying to watch Fox News with Trump, he starts asking me about the little blue pill. And I keep telling him, I'm not a doctor, but I have a pocket full of them if you want one.
commercial advertising has some level of First Amendment protection, not as great as political speech. It doesn't have the kind of strict scrutiny applied to political speech. It still has a level of protection. But pharmaceutical advertising is unique because if a company is advertising, for example, Coca-Cola, the consumer has a choice to whether to buy it, and then he's spending his own money on it, so he's got skin in the game. With pharmaceutical advertising, the consumer's purchasing the product, and it's usually the most expensive form of the product, so that they're usually advertising because they want to bury the existence and the availability of generic drugs that are much cheaper and equally effective. And
yeah, but it's a prescription drug, and I think a decent number of people go, is there a generic of it if it's really expensive? And they'll go, yeah, actually, there's a version that's $20 a pill or $10 a pill as opposed to 80 or whatever.
consumer is spending not...
Maybe here's a good idea. How about a healthcare bill of rights? How about that? That there should be rules about when you go to a doctor, if they are they perceive to be outside of their specialty and they're making a decision about something that's rather big, you are guaranteed a second opinion, but you don't have to find a doctor to do it. They are responsible for for paying for a second opinion if you don't feel like you can trust them. And secondarily, they have to offer you the generic if one exists. How about that? I mean, when you think of like first do no harm, I think it's within the Hippocratic Oath, right? Chat room, what do you think? Hold on, let me see. I'll scroll this over here. I don't even know if I'm still in the air. I'm just doing my show. So, what do you guys think about that? Like a specific, like a law that if a generic exists, a doctor must inform you. Yeah, Australia has generics by law. I think they should at least have to inform you that there is one. And please stop acting like these are serious. They're fucking idiots. Yes, I agree. But again, mostly these clips are about the Democrats that were actually working their ass off, and this rando shit that Hawley's talking about. It does bring up something valuable, and that should be a general rule that if a generic exists, maybe you don't want to take it. Maybe you'd rather have the name brand because you trust it more or something like that. But you should at least have, your doctor should be able to should be responsible enough to mention it to you, and they should have to do it because it's part of the Hippocratic Oath. If I am spending more money on the drug that I need to take than I actually need to get it, then that's money I am not spending on other stuff like food, right? In theory. So that first do no harm, making me pay more for a drug than I would have to ever would be a form of harm. Just saying. House Sparks 2028.
Own money.
Oh, hold on. Is that him?
And most often our money, taxpayer money. Furthermore, the pharmaceutical ad is is getting tax deductions, so we are funding it.
I want to ask you just about that. Under current law, pharma companies can deduct their advertising costs as a business expense.
All companies can do that. Why wouldn't it be?
It's time to change that?
Yeah, and I've actually have a call into Scott Bassan about that, but I'm working very hard.
Horseshit. By the way, you'd talk to Lutnick about it. He's in commerce, and it would violate the Commerce Clause. It would set different standards by which a product can sell. And if you're going to set those kind of rules, then you're saying that drugs are in a separate category all themselves, and therefore should be much more regulated. If you could put that kind of rule on it, you would have already. How about just tighten the rules on what they can say and I don't know. First of all, let's just in drug ads, no more fucking musicals. I don't need to see people dancing down the street because they've danced away their A1C or they've their bronchial asthma is being treated so they can ride a fucking scooter through a mall. No musicals. Let's just start there. No dancing. It's a drug. Simmer down. I know it's a small thing, but you gotta start someplace. Yes, hit that like. Thank you very much. And share the show because it annoys maggots.